All right, welcome to America This Week, Monday edition, long delayed, many episodes missed. I'm Matt Taibbi.
And I'm Walter Kern. Walter Kern Kite. I today was discussing CBS News with another podcaster who was discussing the choice of anchor for the new CBS News. And I said, why didn't they hire Walter Kern Kite?
Walter Kern Kite. And that's the way it is.
It takes a while. It's a slow burn joke.
Yeah, that's anyway. Definitely a slow burn punchline. I put this up already, this at TDub102, ready for some Narco Walter and Narco Matt. Because I'm already pre-annoyed by the premise of this show. Everybody's going to be expecting us to take a certain position. Walter, let's just get this out of the way. You and I disagree about this one. I've never been.
My wife told me we did. My wife told me we disagree.
And it's
didn't know.
Not
Matt.
A big deal, right? Yeah. Wait. Yeah. I mean, I didn't really know it either. Look, I have a fairly extreme view about military force. I think we should only use it when we absolutely have to, like when we're attacked. I go by that old school definition. Right. I don't like any of the wars of choice we've had in my lifetime. And even though this one was far less bloody than
the Afghanistan withdrawal,
even the Iraq War, like we made a choice to make many of our other military engagements almost like intentionally destructive and bloody.
This is my least popular opinion. I think that they fired all those rounds and it did the pyrotechnics for the benefit of the Venezuelans. I think Venezuela, if it was going to have its leader snatched, wanted, and expected America's blow some stuff up and put on a fireworks show. I also am convinced, and I'll, like Candace Owens, be seeking evidence for this later, that Maduro was quite happily taken. And in fact, because of his machismo, probably said, listen, I'll come over there. It will prevent me from getting killed by my own military and other factions and the cartels. But you have to make it look like convincing.
You got to make it look good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, what movie is that from? There's a movie where that happens, where somebody's got to get roughed up a little. You got to make it look good for me. Maybe. Obviously, that's not the official story. Donald Trump said that Maduro almost surrendered, but did not, and that he is now regretting this. But
regretting what?
Regretting having not surrendered.
He's regretting not having fought back. What was he?
No. He's regretting not having.
I see.
The exact quote is, "Now he wished he did
the easy way. He wished he'd done it the easy way
because of what Trump calls. Trump apparently spelled out for him this thing he's calling the Dunroe Doctrine, which and told him that he had to surrender. There was our biggest aircraft carrier group was right off his coast. There was a lot of stuff going on. They were signaling that something was about to happen. You better come or else. And Trump said he almost did it, but didn't. And now he wishes he did. So let's take a look.
Is it true that his inner security detail was a bunch of Cuban special forces who got killed? Is that true?
God, I don't know if that's true. Then I remember that being one of the headlines in Grenada, right?
Right.
That the only troops that actually fought back were the Cubans. But I had not heard that. if that's the case. They definitely played up the surprise element. Trump said it was a heavily fortified military fortress. And then most of what we've gotten, most of the rest of the accounts have come from official releases, and then especially from Marco Rubio, who has done some pretty significant signaling, including a pretty serious hint that Cuba might be next. But let's look at SOT 1. This is Rubio on the Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We're doing AP rules, which is we introduce the person by their full title the first time around. Afterwards, we can call them.
Well, that's only the highest of his full titles, isn't he? Also, National Archivist Marco Rubio.
Oh, is he really? I didn't. I had forgotten that.
He's got like 3 jobs in the administration. The closest in line to the presidency, however. Yeah, Narco Rubio, exactly.
They should add a new honorific, like in Candide, like Marco Rubio de Estrada, whatever, right?
Order of the Blue Cross, Chevalier of the Golden Pigeon, and exactly, Gentleman Extraordinaire.
Gentleman extraordinaire. So we've gotten all the honorifics out of the way. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, National Archivist, Gentleman extraordinaire, Order of the Blue Cross holder. Marco Rubio appeared on Meet the Press yesterday, and said we are not running the country.
Mr. Secretary, who is in charge? Are you running Venezuela right now?
With his toes.
Yeah, I mean, I keep people, fixating on that. Here's the bottom line on it is we expect to see changes in Venezuela. Changes of all kinds, long-term, short-term. We'd love to see all kinds of changes, but the most immediate changes are the ones that are in the national interest of the United States. That's why we're involved here, because of how it applies and has a direct impact on the United States. Okay, we are not going to be able to allow in our hemisphere a country that becomes a crossroads for the activities of all of our adversaries around the world. We just can't allow it. We can't have a country where the people in charge of its military and in charge of its police department are openly cooperating with drug trafficking organizations. We're not going to allow that. These things are direct threats to the United States.
President Trump said we're going to run the country. So is it you? Is it Secretary Hegseth? Who are those people who will be running the country specifically?
Well, it's not running, it's running policy. The policy with regards to this, we want Venezuela to move in a certain direction because not only do we think it's good for the people of Venezuela, it's in our national interest. So this is a team effort by the entire national security apparatus of our country, but it is running this policy. And the goal of the policy is to see changes in Venezuela that are beneficial to the United States, first and foremost, because that's who we work for, but also, we believe, beneficial for the people of Venezuela who have suffered tremendously.
Okay. First of all, before I go on, Walter, do you have any comments about that?
About Marco there?
Yeah.
Well, I think somebody explained to Trump the concept of face, and that it does not just apply to, places like Japan and China, but he was causing whoever might run the country on our behalf a loss of face by saying we're running it. And I think Marco probably came in and said, that's humiliating. But the history of our involvement in Latin America, going way back, is that we intervene sometimes explicitly, sometimes covertly, when things aren't going in the fashion we want. We go against our Benz when the National Fruit Company, or whatever it was, the original Banana Republic moniker came from this. Felt threatened.
The United Fruit Company.
Yeah, felt threatened in Central America. I not to address the whole thing and just Rubio. The more I learn about this, the more I understand their reasoning, at least. We're now in an era of drone warfare, and places that can launch drones are similar to places like Cuba that had to launch in those days ICBMs. You know, sorting out all of the rationales for this action will take a while. But I'm convinced that they are more than just wanting a stunt to burnish Donald Trump's tough guy image.
So can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
This might be a good place to bring up one of my personal New Year's resolutions, which is to focus less this year on what I'm for and what I'm against, and get into more questions about what's actually happening, who's saying what and why, and what do the people who are actually in charge believe about what's going on. What do their opponents believe? Like,
I'm 100% with you on that resolution. And really, it doesn't matter what I am for and against, because it happens anyway. And my service to our listeners and viewers is to somehow give them a sense of why it's happening, and they can make their own choices as to pro or con.
Yeah, and you know, what's happening now is that everybody, and we'll get back to the story very quickly.
Yeah.
But the desire, the demand that people have, the unbelievably strong take on things in the first seconds of every story is now hamstringing everything, because nobody feels like they're empowered to take a step back and say, well, I don't know about that part. And so they only look in the direction that they've already committed to. So especially with a story like this, where, as you say, like, I'm not even sure I fully understand all the different rationales that are behind this thing.
The ones that have come before my eyes, true or not, which would be persuasive if true, are: here's a beachhead for China in South America. Russia and Venezuela had a military agreement that caused us great anxiety. There were drone factories there. There are ways in which they avoid certain mandates to get oil to other countries on the sly, making money for even terrorist organizations. The ones I find most personally persuasive are that we had a refugee crisis from that country. At what point do you have the prerogative to stop a situation which is causing a massive flow of refugees into your country? And finally, the drug thing I do find persuasive. It's a multinational effort getting the drugs into the United States that we so merrily consume and blame others for.
I feel a little compromised on that issue, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, they are, but you know, at the same time, you know, big companies got America addicted to opiates. Sure. Then they pulled out with the full knowledge that people would replace OxyContin with heroin and fentanyl. While they got into the rehab industry in places like Florida, as a fact, in a completely Philip K. Dick, a Scanner Darkly move, they owned both sides of the equation, the addiction side and the rehab side, which has yet to be explored in the realm of Medicare fraud. But I can promise you, rehabs are going to join daycares at some point, especially the rehabs in Florida, which have a special setup, and I have sources as to how they profit people. But in any case, I think we did have a national interest in seeing Venezuela go a different direction. Whether it rose to the point that we should come in with Chinooks and other helicopters and, you know, live rounds, that's for America to decide.
And whether or not it was justified to go in there and essentially abduct the leader of the country, whose legitimacy I understand has been questioned, right?
And whose warrants were not issued by Trump originally.
Right. But you see what we're up against. Here's at RB Ham. Translation: Walter buys neocon propaganda without question. This is where people are. This is the whole troll universe.
I know, and I just, despite my assiduous and meticulous preamble, saying here are the things I'm reading, if they were to be confirmed, I might find some of them persuasive, and then listing them as hypotheticals. I get that. Neocon is an interesting word because I don't even know that it applies in this case.
No,
I don't know that these are neocon wars. They are.
They have neocon characteristics, but they're not neocon wars.
Yeah. Well, what is Trump's longest war so far?
Well, he hasn't really overtly. I mean, the seizure of Maduro and his wife is the biggest active war. Well, I guess if you want to call the bombing of the Iranian bunkers, maybe.
Right. What was Biden's longest war? Well, it's still going on.
It's still going on, yeah.
And it has had 1 million casualties. And so I like to think that neocons, the ones I hate myself, and dislike, are in the business of making big, ongoing, sort of forever battlefields in which contractors and all the pork seekers of the world come in and keep things unstable while they extract the wealth of the country. That has yet to be proven here. It has yet to be shown that we are, taking possession of it in the way we took possession of Afghanistan, for example. So I'm not sure neocon applies.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But again, being as we are more in the business of sorting things out at the moment than giving an opinion, we have been told by the president that they are running Venezuela now. I may start a new feature on Racket called "Today in People Familiar with the Matter."
Is that a rank below experts?
I think it is. Because a person familiar with the matter can have no direct knowledge of anything.
Exactly. The insinuation is that there's somebody not just familiar, but involved. And we're hiding their identity because actually they're among the decision makers.
Right.
But that's like pretending that under that garbage bag is, a supermodel rather than just somebody from the bar. She can't be seen. You'd understand if you could see her, but you can't. And you go, man, she must be hot. No, it's just
a person.
Yeah, it's just Wanda from the bar.
Right. Exactly. Wanda from the bar could literally be a person familiar with the matter. Right. So NBC News has a story out now. What's the title of it? It's called "The CIA Team Steel Doors and a Fateful Phone Call: How the U.S. Captured Maduro in Venezuela." And it's based on interviews with more than a dozen White House administration and congressional officials, but then also cites a person with knowledge of the matter. And that person tells us that the following group of people will now be running Venezuela. It includes Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. So, in the realm of sorting it all out, this is NBC News' reporting, according to a person knowledgeable about the matter. I guess they're trying to avoid familiar. Knowledgeable is a little better than familiar, right?
But they are admitting here that Venezuela can be run from abroad and that we are going to do it. And these are the four. That's a lot. I mean, as I understand Venezuela, listen, I've had only a few days to really try to grok or, comprehend the makeup of the Venezuelan power structure. I'm not quite familiar with the matter yet, but I'm getting familiar. According to a person who's becoming familiar with the matter, Walter Kern, the military runs the country.
A person becoming familiar with the matter. Oh man,
A person
I gotta write that
determined
down.
to someday be familiar with the matter.
A person determined to someday be familiar. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay.
They are, in a sense, the continuity there is provided by the military. And what I saw and read was that there's a lot of anxiety about whether you can actually tell a foreign military that has been de facto in charge what to do. But NBC seems to think it's easy, and these are the people.
Yes, these are the people who are going to be, according to a person knowledgeable about the matter.
Right.
These are the people who are among the people who will be running the country. Now,
One tiny aside. Do you think the
Mhm.
sources negotiate these IDs? Now, in other words, I can call you, a high official. I can call you a person familiar with the matter. I can call you knowledgeable about the matter, or I can say, somebody vitally involved. What would you like?
so my sense is that it's something that the reporters offer up front.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. My guess is, having been in this position a few times, I do know that if you don't give a shit personally, and you don't want an argument from the person, you offer a person familiar with the matter, because that's so vague that it can be anybody, right? And if all you really want to do is get the information in there, then that's what you say. However, the idea is that you eventually try to improve the attribution, right? And so go ahead. Mhm.
Could this be John Brennan?
It could be, yeah, easily.
Does it even have to be someone in the administration?
It does not. No.
See,
So that the old attribution used to be a person with direct knowledge of the matter,
right.
and that's kind of what they're trying to allude to in this thing. I'm sorry, folks, we're off on this aside.
Yeah,
but
sorry. Yeah,
it's an interesting thing, but we'll come back to it, because I think we are going to start this up on Racket, a little box that comes out. Okay, so here's Rubio on that question. Let's go to Satu. Here he is asked about the future of Venezuela.
A couple things. First of all, Maria Corina Machado is fantastic, and she's someone I've known for a very long time, and she the whole movement is. But we are dealing with the immediate reality. The immediate reality is that, unfortunately, and sadly, but unfortunately, the vast majority of the opposition is no longer present inside of Venezuela. We have short-term things that have to be addressed right away. So now there are other people in charge of the military and police apparatus there. They're going to have to decide now what direction they want to go. And we hope they will choose a different direction than the one Nicolas Maduro picked. Ultimately, we hope this leads to a holistic transition all the way around in Venezuela. No more drug trafficking, no more Iran Hezbollah presence there, and no more using the oil industry to enrich all our adversaries around the world and not benefiting the people of Venezuela, or frankly, benefiting the United States and the region.
You talk about a holistic transition. I think there's a lot of focus on potential elections. How soon will elections be held? Within 30 days, Mr. Secretary?
Elections? Well, look.
I'm sorry. That reaction by him
The
is
election
funny.
should have happened a long time ago. The elections did happen. They lost them, and they didn't count the votes, or they refused to count the votes, and everyone knows it. So all of that, I think, is premature at this point. There's a lot of work to be done here.
I mean, her question assumes that he can dictate to Venezuela when it holds elections.
Yeah, there's a bit of a funny contradiction there. Is that they're a little bit trying to beat him up for being the de facto unannounced viceroy of Venezuela, and then asking him as the de facto unannounced viceroy of Venezuela when elections will be held. However, this is a real issue.
Could he have said, "We don't need no stinking elections"?
Right.
I mean,
that would have been. Who was that character? What was the name of that character? They called him. It was El
that was
Guapo and the
that was
Three
a tri-
Amigos.
no, I thought that was the Treasure of Sierra Madre originally.
No,
when-
no, that was this was the treasure
badges
Sierra
we
Madre,
don't
or-
need badges. We don't need those stinking badges.
I thought it was Magnificent Seven.
Oh, maybe.
We'll need mystery producer to look that one
Yeah.
up.
I actually know myself to be wrong now as I think
Really?
about it. Yeah.
But it would have been a very funny sort of film reference. But no, he didn't do that. And look, this is a real thing. Like this whole thing is weird, right? Like, so Maria Corina Machado, who won the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize, I think in part in anticipation of this very thing happening, gave a very, very powerful quote in sort of in support of what had taken place. You know, Venezuelans, the hour of freedom has arrived. Today, we are prepared to enforce our mandate and take power. Let us remain vigilant, active, and organized until the democratic transition is achieved. A transition that needs all of us. And then Trump gave a press conference in which he called her a very nice lady, but no. Basically, he said, sorry, not a very nice lady, a very nice woman. But, quote, she doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country to lead Venezuela. And so there is this whole thing up in the air about who is actually running Venezuela when there will be elections, who's going to be running things in the meantime, and how that process is going to work, which is one of the reasons why it's premature to start talking about what we think about all this, because we don't even freaking know.
We don't even know where the vice president is. I kept seeing reports that he's in Russia.
Is that true?
I saw reports that he was in Russia, and I guess they sort of chime with the fact that a high-level Chinese delegation was meeting with Maduro right before, they whisked him away. By the way, it was Treasure of Sierra Madre. It was just confirmed. Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well,
one of the federales who comes up, or policeman who comes up to the mining camp, and
Yeah. No, I totally got that one wrong. I haven't seen that one in a while.
Yeah.
I did just watch In a Lonely Place, which is another great
one of my top film noir.
Right?
Top 5. Yep. And especially because it's about a writer.
I was gonna say it's about a screen. It's one of those things that you probably shouldn't watch with any members of your family, because it's about a crazy and possibly homicidal screenwriter.
Yes.
It's the same reason I will not show The Shining to my children, because I don't want them to think about daddy spending all that time alone.
Right. And when they hear a typewriter sound effect like we use, they will forever be terrified.
Oh yeah, of course.
Hear those keys clicking.
Yep.
We're Digression Nation today. Let's stay focused. We've been off partying for too long.
No, I mean, look, this is all interesting stuff. I mean, it's a wild situation. They went in but by the way, let's not forget that the United States hasn't had a ton of luck with these kinds of commando operations in the past. Like we've fucked a lot of these up.
What was the Jimmy Carter expedition to
Right?
free the hostages called?
I mean, they practically landed in the wrong country in that one, right?
But there are all kinds of conspiracy theories about whether or not he was let down by his own military who wanted to see Reagan come in.
I see.
Right,
all
I know is that if Trump had failed, it wouldn't be his motives that were questioned. It would be his execution.
Right. Exactly. This is a great comment from @Micah Rock and Roll. I honestly didn't think we were capable of this sort of mission anymore. I mean, look, yeah. I mean, We don't have a great
Bay of Pigs. You're right.
Bay of Pigs. Here we go. Black Hawk Down. Another one. Yeah, we've had a lot of these situations where the Joint Chiefs come to the president and say, "It's a piece of cake. We've been drilling this forever. Our guys are the best," and then they go out there and they just face plant.
Matt, can I ask our producer to
Mhm.
find the mashup of amateur video of the abduction, the operation in Caracas, to the tune of Fortunate Son? It was all over Twitter a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it starts out with those, legendary chords, dun dun,
Yeah, right.
and you see Chinooks flying as filmed from a balcony, maybe a balcony of the ruling class, as they fire, whatever those munitions were and get big explosions. It was the greatest recruiting video that I've seen for the U.S. military, and I do know that we've, until recently at least, had a little bit of a problem with our re-ups and our recruitment. And maybe this whole thing was just the world's greatest recruiting exploit for, U.S. Army. Because I played that video that I hope our producer can find maybe 7 times in a row. I find it that rousing. See, the thing I have to patrol in myself is not neocon sensibilities, because
it's teen video game or whatever.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's my like anime video game. I don't know if you saw it's a guy named Psyop Anime who did a quick video of the animation of the raid. That's actually the one. You watch that and you go,
Oh, here we go. Is this it?
Yeah, here. Dude, try not to respond.
All right.
Yep. So in the constant fight with my own psyche, in which, the educated and moral young Minnesotan and Cub Scout, conscience stricken about all the problems of the 1970s, fights with, I don't know who the other side would be, Colonel Jack or General Jack Ripper or Colonel
General Jack Ripper, Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now.
That's exactly right. The Duvall part of me. They just come in there and they push the damn button. And the thing about that John Fogerty, that Creedence song, is that it's kind of it's been portrayed as an anti-war anthem. It's really a class anthem about about the less fortunate people, but in this sense it might be appropriate because the people in the U.S. military who carried out that raid and who did so in such surprising and effective manner are not the fortunate sons of America. They aren't. No. And yet they can pull off shit that the president of Harvard can't write a damn paper without plagiarizing. But you can't plagiarize helicoptering into a major city in South America.
No, and that's one of the things that you find out very quickly when you spend any time with the military is that the people who actually know what the hell they're doing are all at the NCO level or below, and
Right.
and the people you went to college with or were likely to go to college with are in an office somewhere that's air conditioned.
Well, it's like the nurses in a hospital versus the doctors.
Right, yeah, exactly. So yeah, we can't. It's interesting. It's a point of conversation that we actually pulled this thing off. There was a significant amount of reporting about how this was done. They did it kind of like Ocean's 11, according to the reports. They built a full scale replica of the compound and practiced going in and out. They had a blowtorch or some kind of gigantic blowtorch type thing that was apparently meant to be deployed if they had to cut through a steel barrier. And they've been rehearsing this for months at a time. The secret was kept from everybody but a select few people. It didn't get out, and they actually pulled it off, which is sort of interesting.
In the Reagan administration, and I lived this. Walter Kern, born 1962. He's 8 in 1970. He's 7 and 8 and 9 at the time. People are getting assassinated. Altamont, the Manson murders. A sense of the U.S. falling apart. Then when I'm 13, we withdraw ignominiously from Vietnam, clinging to helicopter rope ladders. At least our allies and the people we were leaving behind trying to get away. There is some sense in which Reagan's invasion of Grenada and things like that felt like they were attempts to show that we can do shit right.
Totally. I would even say the whole first Iraq war was almost entirely about that. Although I guess they did actually invade a country, so there was a pretext. But yeah.
So I'm not going to discount in my stochastic set of columns about the statistical likelihood of various motives, and we know all motives are mixed. So the contribution made by I don't care if you get Maduro. Yeah, get Maduro. But make sure we get video. Make sure we have like civilian assets on the ground, in their cars, on their balconies, looking like regular people, filming our explosions. If you don't bring that back, I don't care who else you bring back.
Yeah. And they apparently did this. They apparently had a significant number of people on the ground. The NBC story talks about them flying at 100 feet above the water. The special forces were carried by helicopters, who brought law enforcement officials who plucked Maduro from his residence. Other aircraft fired weapons to disable Venezuela's air defense systems and clear a path for the helicopters. Let's see. When Delta Force breached Maduro's residence, he and his wife were taken, quote, completely by surprise. Maduro
I forget we took his wife.
Yeah, we took his wife.
Supposedly, she's the brains behind the operation. I've heard more than once.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And look, that does recall the other quasi-successful, I guess, thing, which was the assassination of bin Laden, which I always is much disputed. If there are certain reporters who will tell you that whole story is not true about how it came about.
Certain very good reporters with amazing track records.
With amazing track records.
Well,
yes.
I will say this: we got to see Maduro, okay, unlike bin Laden. We got him alive,
right?
Unlike bin Laden. We didn't leave behind apparently one of our finest stealth helicopters, as happened with bin Laden. I mean, the bin Laden raid, the more you go into it, it's one of the murkiest military sagas ever. The guy who supposedly shot bin Laden lives about 100 miles from me in Butte, Montana, Rob O'Neill. Remember how they actually brought forward a particular commando who took credit for it? That was a little too much for me personally in terms of trying to sell the whole thing. I doubt we're going to get some lone hero who, ran in the bedroom and, brought him out personally.
Yeah, and look, there were always some elements to that story that seemed a little bit unlikely. If you saw Zero Dark 30, which is a fantastic movie to watch as entertainment, but it's the most
from Leon Panetta Productions.
Yeah, exactly. It's the most eloquent argument in favor of torture you'll ever see, and it tells a story that essentially we had to beat this information out of people, beat it out of a lot of people, and then once armed with the knowledge, trusty American know-how and detective work, deduced where bin Laden was. There's another version of the story where somebody just walked into the embassy and told us where it was, and that one seems.
There's another version that he was already dead, and unfortunately, though that sounds preposterous, we have no evidence to the contrary since his body disappeared.
Right, yeah, exactly. I always yes, we flew it out over the ocean and just dumped it because reasons.
Well, the reasons were supposedly to prevent his martyrdom from becoming a kind of cause among his followers. But how must they have felt when they heard he was just dumped out of a helicopter? I mean,
it's strange. It didn't seem like too much of an anti-martyr kind of a thing to do, but
the production of the bin Laden affair. Assassination, which wasn't supposed to be an assassination. I mean, weren't we supposed to try to take him alive?
I would have thought
it would have good evidentiary value, I would think. Weirdly, if we'd gone in and killed Maduro, whoa, would the conspiracy theories be flying now?
Well,
because
absolutely, yeah.
Presumably, we're going to get to hear him testify, or his lawyers at least defend him in court, because that.
If you were his lawyer, would you let him talk?
Would I let him talk? It's a different kind of trial. I'd have to think about it. He is a politician and a leader who may demand a word. I mean,
yeah,
it's one thing for a regular witness to shut up while their lawyer talks for them. It's another for someone who used to be the sort of head honcho of maybe even the dictator of a country to just sit there sheepishly while somebody else is their mouthpiece. That might be beyond his capabilities.
Right. This one I don't even know. Can we please talk about the Venezuelan migrants yelling at the lefties? LOL. It's been gratifying. Is that a thing on social media? I missed all that whole business.
Well, so Matt, take it from me, who grazes in much grungier pastures than you do.
No, that's not possible. I graze in the grungiest conceivable pastures.
There are videos all over the place of groups of Venezuelan expats being surprised by the news and suddenly getting up and dancing and looking at their cell phones. There have been, I loved the one on there have been several women, quite eloquent women, who said, "Hey, where were you liberals when we were, when my friend was eating his dog because we were starving? You call yourself anti-imperialists, but in fact, this guy was propped up by other powers. And this is the removal of an imperial government. It's just that the empire happened to be maybe China, Russia, etc. But yeah, there's plenty of Venezuela thanks you stuff out there, and there's plenty of, hey, you hypocrites, standing up for Maduro, and it's also true that just the other year, Trump was being accused of being too soft on dictators. He loved them. They were the only people he wanted to talk to. Maduro was mentioned in that list. Of course, North Korea's leader and so on.
Right.
Trump was dictator adjacent. They all vibed together. What
No,
what
but
happened
it's the
to
wrong dictators, though. They would like it if he abducted Putin so that they could put in somebody even worse.
that? Well, you saw Zelensky come out and say, like, okay, you had a success in Venezuela. Now you know what you can do. Why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
The capture of the, I mean, is that serious? The capture of the Russian leader from, Moscow would be sort of go unpunished? What?
Yeah, you want to see what a commando action looks like? I think the Russians can probably cook something up a little bit more interesting than Venezuela. All right, let's look at some of those reactions. Let's look at number 6. This is somebody we've already mentioned, Marina Corina Machado. This is thanking Trump, and there's some video that goes with it, if we can see that. Blah, blah, blah. Brave people of Venezuela took to the streets in 30 countries. We Venezuelans thank Donald Trump. And again, this is before the whole nice woman press conference.
Right.
And here's some video that we see of people celebrating, which...
And then, like all video, I've been told that some of it comes from years ago, and
yeah, some of it's like sports related, and
Exactly.
okay, then all right, let's see number 9. Bernie Sanders gave a statement on the Venezuelan tech. I wonder what that's going to say. Donald Trump has once again shown his contempt for the Constitution and the rule of law. The president of the United States does not have the right to unilaterally take this country to war, even against a corrupt and brutal dictator like Maduro. The United States does not have the right, as Trump stated this morning, to run Venezuela. Congress must immediately pass the war powers resolution to end, blah, blah, blah. So again, as we've discussed before, this is, Bernie is right about this.
Except it's not a war.
Well,
I mean, a war is when the other side fights back, Matt. Are they fighting back?
yeah, but I would
Are they
call
firing
it
on our ships?
They are not. They are not.
Did they fire on our troops in any significant way? Is it a
No.
war?
No, I mean, I would
War
call it
takes
an act of
two.
war to go in and scoop up the leader of a country. But
A war,
I get that
an
it's
act
not
of war against whom?
against Venezuela. I mean, look, my view of this is that it's the responsibility of the people of Venezuela to do this. If they have an illegitimate ruler and he needs to be taken out of office.
Okay, but that's here. I'm going to say this. It's not that the U.S. doesn't run Venezuela. In some ways, elements of the U.S. run a lot of places. Sometimes they run the opposition, and sometimes they run the leadership, and sometimes they run this side, and sometimes they run that side. Trump already in his Truth Social posts has suggested that Venezuela and our intelligence agencies cooperated to steal the election from him in 2020. He's already suggested that almost explicitly. So the question will be whether in the coming 6 months, couple of months, year, evidence for these rather inflammatory and outrageous and shocking statements emerges. So how can I put it? I looked up this is my familiar with the matter part. I looked up in the National Geographic's World, Atlas yesterday, the entry on Venezuela. It's a very strange set of governors and leaders that they've had over the years. We've been involved there for a long time, as we are in most places. The people of Venezuela maybe have a right to direct their own affairs, but a lot of them are saying that right was taken from them by Maduro. So should the people of Germany have settled their own affairs? I mean, not when they start invading other countries, I guess, and Venezuela hadn't done that, except in the sense that maybe they were invading ours. Maybe among their many
Well, we didn't even fight Germany until we were attacked, right? So
Exactly, true.
yeah.
I'm just saying that our inextricable involvement in South and Central American politics has been pretty much a constant. It's just, what are our objectives? They have changed, but our Monroe Doctrine fueled meddling has been a constant.
Right. Yeah, I have tended not to be a fan of that meddling. I think I've
Nor have I.
usually thought that it gets us into trouble. The kinds of things that they're talking about as reasons for what they're doing are closer to the realm of a legitimate military objective than some of the things that we've done in the past. With Iraq, they had to invent out of whole cloth a reason to invade a country that was completely unrelated to the matter that was seizing the attention of the United States. And then beyond that, it was unbelievably destructive in terms of infrastructure. It felt like they did that on purpose. The occupation of Afghanistan seemed like it went on for almost like that was the point of it.
But to me, Matt, this may seem strange. The effectiveness of this operation has caused me to question things like, did we really need an army to take out Saddam Hussein?
Well, right, exactly.
Well, I've started to ask myself, is this not, in fact, the preferred method compared to staging a freaking ground war and having hundreds of thousands of casualties?
Yeah, and creating huge masses of downstream problems. I mean, when I saw this news and I saw that Maduro was already, like, I found this out when Maduro was already on a plane here. Like I was watching football or something like that. I don't want to know. On the weekends, like, I don't care. But imagine if we had done that in Iraq. Like, they made this whole show out of shock and awe,
Exactly.
which created, just think about having visited Iraq afterwards. This is a country that depends, that depended in a very extraordinary way on access to electricity, on access to air conditioning, clean water, all these things. We just blew it up at the beginning as part of a TV show.
Did we need to take over Afghanistan?
No. Did we need to have Jay Bremer running around the country and deciding in a half second which warlords he liked and which ones he didn't? Do we need people who didn't know the difference between a Sunni and a Shia, handing bricks of cash out to one or the other? Like, this is the part that I've never understood about American foreign policy, is that we tend to swim in waters intellectually way deeper than the ones that we're capable of. I don't like this thing.
But next time the C-130s fire up and the troop ships, if we still use ships to transport troops, which I don't think we do in a major way anymore, but I'm not sure, for the ground invasion of a country, I'm going to say, why don't you just do a Fortunate Son on them and go in there and get the guy and his wife out of his bedroom? As much as I don't like human conflict, I'd prefer that to my neighbor's kids dying. Okay. And their kids over there dying by the tens and hundreds of thousands.
Right. Okay. So here we have at Bob Reynolds 2515 saying, if Russia did this in the USA, would it be okay? I say no. That's why I'm a self-determination.
You mean if Russia kidnapped our president?
Yes, exactly. But see, here's the thing.
Why don't they?
Why don't they? Because and this is another thing that drives me crazy about the way people think nowadays. They don't, because we are a massively powerful country that would turn anybody who tried to do this into a parking lot.
And why don't we do it to them, mister? Because there would be massive blowback. Because I'll tell you, there's an actual qualitative difference between nuclear armed superpowers and dictatorships in places like Venezuela. and the prudent thing is to not start a fight that will obliterate the globe. Okay, that actually comes into our calculations. This is not a moral calculus game played in heaven or out, among the stars. It's earthly. And Russia does this, in fact, to all kinds of places itself.
They did it while I was there. I remember Abkhazia, Chechnya, right?
Yes.
And they didn't always do it in. Actually, they didn't always show a tremendous amount of discretion in how they did it either. But go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. But on the other hand, the question is whether the effects and whether the forestalled conflict and forestalled destruction is greater than that which is expended in the operation. And their argument is going to be that our world adversary, China, has and Russia as well, have been building up diplomatically and militarily a kind of beachhead in the Western Hemisphere, and I want that demonstrated. I do, but that seems to be the ultimate rationale from the best sources that I've been able to obtain. It's that this is just about drugs, I think, is a little disingenuous, but it sells, and it's a good poster, and it's important because the other question is, where does drug money go in our world?
Right.
Where do these billions of dollars go? Do they go to Maduro's jet skiing on, that big lake that they have there that they drill oil in? Or is it maybe flow into the world rackets? And I think, honestly, what Trump's doing is he's, at least to those who really support him, is he's trying to disrupt in a strategic but surgical fashion some kind of world network that involves our enemies, and which derives a lot of its sustenance financially from organized crime. That's what I think Trump's biggest fans thinks he's doing. He's upsetting a system.
Yeah, and there are slowly but surely, I would say, some justifications or some alleged justifications that are coming out. Mostly, we haven't seen that yet because there's been so much blow by blow that's needed to be covered. But some of the things that you're talking about have started to come out, but only just started.
Before the last election, you and I were both sort of shown a story about supposed Venezuelan interference in our election, right? Through Smartmatic and Dominion, etc. Now, some sources brought that story and swore by it. Others said it wasn't true. It has yet to be adjudicated in any public way. But should Maduro come out and confess in a way that we find plausible and not the results of pressure?
If he comes out covered in bruises,
right. Should he confess to having done something like interfere in an election, or having been a witting participant in some organized subversion of the United States,
or Mexico, which is
or Mexico? Will that change minds, or is this to be considered purely in a kind of vacuum as a moral decision?
Yeah. Well, okay. So here are some of the other reactions. Let's just get to these quickly before, and then we'll come back. So we got Bernie. Bernie's telling us that it's illegal, which is true. Leaving out the fact that we've been ignoring those laws kind of systematically for a while.
Matt, Jefferson went against the Barbary Pirates. I mean, there are a lot of actions that fall short of war that are military. Has Venezuela declared war on us?
No, but we do technically, and even the Trump administration sort of admitted that the boat actions were motivated in part by the fact that they didn't have congressional authority to go on land. So, you know, there's a bit of a thing there. But
if I was Maduro and I had a $50 million bounty on my head, I'd get on the SAT phone and say, "Can you guys get me the hell out of here? There's a lot of people in my country who need $50 million."
Yeah. So just to get this, to be clear about this, in November, Susie Wiles gave an interview to Vanity Fair. That's the chief of staff for, I guess we haven't talked about Susie Wiles a lot in the show. Right. And in it, she said, if we were to authorize some activity on land, then it's war. We'd need Congress. She said, so, you know, that implies that that's one of the reasons why they went after the boats. So look, you can get into all that if you want. That's what Bernie said. Let's go to number 10. This is Nancy Pelosi's view of the whole thing. Venezuela is ruled by an illegitimate regime, but so a lot of these are buts. They're all, you know, Maduro sucks, but the administration has not made the case that an urgent threat to America's national security existed to justify the use of military force. Okay, President Trump has made no secret of his intentions to effectively abolish the Congress. That's a strong statement.
The Congress of the United States?
Yeah, the Congress of the United States. And that pattern continues today with his flagrant disregard for the Article 1 war powers of Congress, which is essential to our constitutional system of checks and balances. Again, I would agree, had Nancy Pelosi not sat in her hands while we flagrantly violated this rule over and over again, while
Biden put a $25 million bounty on Maduro's head. You know, is it more honorable to let the bounty hunters of Venezuela go get him, or to go in yourself and do it?
I don't know. But anyway, so this is her thing. It is entirely hypocritical in light of his recent pardon of former Honduran President Juan Hernandez, who was responsible, blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Those are some deep cuts, baby.
Yeah. And then, of course, we can't go without having Zoran Mamdani weigh in. He's got a SOT. So let's hear some video from the Zoran.
Yeah.
As well as other members of my team, I called the president and spoke with him directly to register my opposition to this act, and to make clear that it was an opposition based on being opposed to a pursuit of regime change, to the violation of federal international law, and
what happened to his
desire to see that be consistent each and every day.
And what was his response to you in that conversation?
I registered my opposition. I made it clear, and we left it at that.
Okay.
He's acting like he leads some sort of sovereign community. That Mamdani is already positioning himself as a commentator on international affairs before, you know, even cementing his power in New York is very strange. He's Trump's secret weapon, I'm afraid, if he keeps on like this.
Yeah, so I don't even disagree with Mamdani in that situation. Like I do agree that, you know, we shouldn't, like I don't agree in these regime change with these regime change actions. But New York is not another country, and yeah, that was a little bit international statesman-y from him, and also. I just can't get past his introductory speech where he talked about how we're going to leave behind the frigidity of rugged individualism and embrace the warmth of collectivism. So Trotsky's been dead for how long, and we've got to exhume him to have him write these speeches again. Like, my God,
he's gone straight to demagogue without having shown any prowess as an executive whatsoever. I mean, literally, this guy has gone faster from rapper to demagogue on international affairs without any rest stops in between to actually do anything than I have ever seen a politician. The fact is that I think if we're going to predict what's going to happen, not talk about our druthers or what we support or don't support, I can be clear on that. This is going to be a win for the people who did it. And it'll be a win for these reasons. Maduro seems to be cooperating, which means that his new life in the United States, whether under pressure or not, is going to lead him to say condemnatory things about Venezuela and his own regime, which is a card that has not been played yet and will be played. What other cards will be played? Well, I don't think that Cuba can probably last for very long without subsidized Venezuelan oil. Should Cuba be freed from the perspective of Cuban exiles in Florida, you will no longer have Florida even in play as a state in presidential elections. Marco Rubio will be made honorary Grand Mason of Florida, and they'll no longer have a governor. It will just be whatever.
Yeah, it'll be Don Fernando E. Florida E. Marco Rubio, right?
Florida in excelsis. And so, and what other cards? Now, what's Trump's downside? That it turns into a quagmire? Well, literally, he could walk away right now, and what would they criticize? The destabilization of Venezuela? If it falls into some kind of anarchy? I mean, let's examine it in purely political terms. I don't know what his risk is, but I see what his potential benefit is.
Well, I think the downside is that there are going to be people who are and we were going to talk about what the biggest stories of 2024 were. And, I would say it's a sort of undeclared civil war thing that we have now, where we have the federal government in many places is not respecting state authorities. State authorities are refusing to respect federal authority, right? They're making dueling announcements.
Has Mark Kelly spoken up yet? Because it would seem that Mark Kelly, in warning people not to take illegal orders, maybe had some portent of something like this happening. I mean, he's a big loser. All the people telling the military to question Donald Trump's orders have really lost out, because the kind of people who sign up for our volunteer military are pretty psyched after hearing Fortunate Son to that video. And the idea that there's going to be some, seditionist uprising within the military, I think, is gone.
So let's see. I believe this is after the Venezuela action. Can we see number SOT 6 here? This is another. It's a new video from Senator Kelly about the refusal of orders. Oh, is this the old one? This is the old one, right? Yeah, I think we need the new one. The new one is 13, I think.
I've got a question for you.
Oh, okay.
How many generations of Donald Trump's family have served in the military? 0. Now, for me and my family, service to our country is in my blood. My great-grandfather served in the U.S. Navy after immigrating from Ireland. Both of my grandfathers served during World War II. Both of my...
Just grammatically, didn't we just have a whole bunch of people's service in his blood? I don't know. Sorry. I guess that's right. Is that right?
Right.
It felt like we went to from anyway. Let's go ahead.
Parents wore uniforms. My dad in the 82nd Airborne, and both of them as career police officers. And when it was our turn, my brother and I started as volunteer EMTs as teenagers before becoming Navy captains, pilots in the United States Navy, and NASA astronauts. Donald Trump, he deferred the draft 5 times because he had bone spurs. Look, not everyone has to serve in our military. I get that. But when you're going to question my patriotism and lecture me about duty to this country and threaten me with a court-martial, 4 generations of service.
Dude, you started
to this
it. What are
country
you so? What are
earns
you? What are
me
you so
the right to
surprised by?
speak. 5 deferments earns nothing.
Okay.
So what? So what, dude? I mean, there's all kinds of people in the current military who have served in their families at least as long as you, and at least in as distinguished a fashion. Who are? I can't sort out what point they want to make. Is it a tough guy, militaristic objection to Donald Trump? And do they own all of these wars in which their families served? I mean, he's talking about Vietnam, right? So he's psyched about Vietnam. He thinks, you know, are they? Is this an anti-war message? Is it a pro-war message? Is it that the military only has to answer to people who've been in it? That civilian rule really has an asterisk by it, and that's if you and your family have been in it. I mean,
yeah, I mean, the whole thing about 5 deferments earns you nothing. I think he's missing the point that votes earn you something. But
he was the one who started it. It's not as though Trump came out and challenged him. He came out and challenged Trump's orders.
Yeah.
In a vague and open-ended fashion. It's all a game. Somebody really enlightened me the other day with a piece of information that I think our audience can use as a filter going forward this year. And in the next couple of years. Mark Kelly wants to run for president. That's what I get from that. I get everybody's starting to want to run for president all across the board. The governor of Utah, they're talking about him running for president on the strength of his response to the Charlie Kirk assassination. And somebody said the other day, there's no downside in running for president in America. Other people pay for it. You get tons of publicity, which you can then trade for all kinds of things, you know, network and other spots on the news as a commentator and so on. There's absolutely no downside. No matter how half-assed your campaign is, you end up 3 times to 30 times as famous on other people's money.
Yeah, and it's funny, even if you suck at running for president, it doesn't necessarily mean a negative. Look at Kamala Harris. I would have thought she would never have reached higher office ever after her campaign, and she ended up the vice president. So
right now, anybody with an angle is trying, as far as I can see. And I just see the nascent Mark Kelly political campaign in which he hopes that everything comes a cropper, that Donald Trump's decisions, you know, somehow prove disastrous, and he comes out as the tough guy, I told you so character. And we're seeing this with Democrats across the board now. I mean, whoever, I keep forgetting the name of the main candidate who, you know, got caught drunk at the wedding. What's his name? The guy who went to Hotchkiss, but is the salt of the earth. Veteran.
Oh God, that guy. Yeah, no, I've already forgotten his name. The main guy.
Yes, the main guy. Sorry, main.
Yeah.
It's a mixed message, is all.
In my mind, he's Mark Lobster. I don't know what his real name is. All right. Let's look at the video 13 as well. This is Kelly's. He's got a reaction on his Captain Mark Kelly page. So he's kind of going the John Kerry route of just like,
right,
you know, draping himself in military plumage as much as possible. Although it's less revolting than in Kerry's case, because Kerry obviously, remember, threw his medals out. But okay, over 25 years. Okay, he's listing his accomplishments. I never expected that the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense would attack me for for speaking out. My rank and retirement. This is all over the retirement thing. Is there a SOT here with him with a video reaction? No, I guess not. All right.
But I like Pete Hegseth, the most unqualified Secretary of Defense. Well, the last secretary, there have been many Secretary of Defenses, Mark, who've never served in the military. And according to the standards which you just put forward, Hegseth, who did, must be at least more qualified than they were.
Well, no, but you're forgetting, Walter, that the primary qualification of being the defense secretary is being the CEO of Lockheed Martin or whatever the fuck it is, right?
Alcoa.
Yeah, Alcoa, whatever those top 5 contractors are. If you don't come from that world, no. And like that's sort of an interesting thing. Like nobody who is a complete stranger to that universe has ever reached that office, right? And
the fact of the matter is that Hegseth has out cock of the walk to Mark Kelly, because the thing that's distinctive about his service as the head of the Department of War, we forget that it's now called that,
right.
is that he is a hero to the troops, to the grunts, and he's always doing pull-ups and PT and all other sorts of very military male strutting. And Mark Kelly should be positively enamored of him, given the criteria that he just laid out.
Just to at Mary Rapuano, what the fuck is ASAT? ASAT, I'm sorry. It's an age-old acronym, means sound on tape. So usually when you do any kind of show on TV, there's a list of stuff. There's one kind of a notation for text and another kind for video with sound. The one for video with sound is called ASAT. And so when you hear people ask for that, that's what it is. But yeah, no, Walter, you're exactly right.
I mean, Hegseth with his tattoos and his, past of consuming alcohol and perhaps slaying the ladies at hotels and, doing push-ups and pull-ups with Kennedy. I mean, Mark, he's outdoing you on the macho front. He is Hegseth, I think, next to Trump, maybe Kennedy, the most hated cabinet member there. And yet he seems to be having a lot of fun. It doesn't seem to be bothering him. And I think he just drives some of these types crazy. He was a Fox News contributor. How the hell can he be the Department of War secretary?
Well, it's abundantly obvious that the a lot of the objections to the Trump appointments had to do with contracting. Now, in many cases, there were people who were correct to point out that so-and-so lacked certain kinds of experience, but it wasn't an accident that the biggest objections came in the realm of military intelligence and pharmaceutical contracting, right? Because there's a long established way that things are done in those areas, and people who don't come from that world just do not make those offices. That's what that is. So it's just.
Was Dick Cheney a veteran? I forget.
Cheney, I do not believe so. No, was he?
I don't recall that he was. And
but he had a gaggle of supporters from like the Office of Naval Intelligence. He, going back all the way to his congressional days, he had worked with people in naval intelligence for a variety of things. There was the what was that thing called? The it was like the Office of
our producer said he did not serve 5 deferments.
5 deferments? Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah, but I didn't hear you, Mark, on the Dick Cheney on the Dick Cheney question.
Yeah, he was probably at the funeral with sitting next to Rachel.
Maddow.
But anyway, okay. So the other thing that we got to talk about, because this is an issue that is going to have significant importance for the entire world, which is what happens with Venezuela's oil. Because it has enormous reserves, bigger than Iraq. People forget this. And
people forget that we now in the Western Hemisphere between Venezuela and the United States, and I guess Canada would be included, have reserves that rival those of the rest of the world. The video I liked best out of this whole fandango was the guy in sunglasses on the streets in Caracas, who was interviewed by an American or at least English-speaking reporter, and he said, "Yeah, oil. Of course, it's about oil. What do you think they came here for? The recipe for arepas?"
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why we're not invading certain other countries in the world, or capturing their presidents. But this is going to become quickly, I think, a big issue. Chris Van Hollen, who's the Maryland senator, longtime congressman. Let's listen to number 11, where he talks about this. This has a kind of Iraqish kind of ring to it when he talks.
In this case, it's my view that the Trump administration's been lying to the American people. This has never been about stopping drugs from coming to the United States. We all support stopping drugs. Mm-hmm. This, from the beginning, has been about getting rid of Maduro, grabbing Venezuela's oil for American oil companies and Trump's billionaire buddies. Donald Trump, claimed that he'd been against the war in Iraq from the beginning. That wasn't true. But what we do know is he said, well, having gone into Iraq, we should have gotten their oil. Right. This is what drives Donald Trump. And our servicemen and women perform magnificently. But I think it's outrageous that the President of the United States puts American lives at risk so big American oil companies and his billionaire buddies can profit.
Boy, there's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
And most of it's bullshit, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, number one, Venezuela's oil production took a huge dive under its leadership over the last couple of decades. It's producing much less oil than it used to. And one thing that bothers the citizens of an oil-rich country? When they aren't getting any money.
Yeah, when you have to deal drugs for money, even though you're sitting on like the world's biggest gold mine,
and when you're giving the oil away to places like Cuba instead of selling it at market prices, and as
for the Iraq oil thing, I was all in favor of, like, if we were there, yeah, let's take it. Like, I don't understand not, I mean, I guess the idea of turning it over to the Iraqi people, but I don't know. I felt a little more mercenary about that. Like,
once you're in the realm of warfare, you're in the realm of self-interest, right? And the way we're supposed to do wars now is we invade, destabilize, and destroy whole countries and kill tens of thousands and have tens of thousands killed, as happened in Iraq, but we're too good to take the oil. Well, right. I mean, once you're in the bloody and devilish game of, power projection against human beings en masse, let's not be, angels about everything. It sounds to me like everybody's got an objection. None of them add up. If he thinks that we should, of course, stop drugs, then, well, we just got a twofer, dude, because we did, presumably this will impede the drug flow. And it better, because Donald Trump hung his hat on it. It, at least among other things, should have some demonstrable effect in that area. But, and you also got control of a country that has these huge oil reserves, and you wrested control from the Chinese, who I promise you want to slurp up all that oil for themselves.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And, people can't have it all ways. Like, if you're complaining that America's in sharp decline, that not enough is being done to make sure that the next generation is going to prosper as previous generations have, but you don't want to do things, get your hands dirty, and and get access to cheaper energy. You'd rather pay through the nose in many other ways.
But watch the guy turn around next election season and say gas prices are too high.
Right.
I mean, the problem is that resources in this world are all objects of contested ownership and contested influence. If you don't get the oil, somebody else gets the oil. If you don't get the critical minerals, somebody else gets the minerals. Donald Trump is being pretty naked, in fact, as he is in Greenland, about the fact that he wants these strategic resources to be under the sway of the United States. I don't think he's being that hypocritical about it. I mean, compared to Bush, who in Iraq, oil. Dick Cheney works for Halliburton, the biggest oil services company in the world. I didn't know that. I mean, like they thought it was first about babies and incubators, and then the second time, I forget what it was about. It was sort of about 9/11 a little bit. And other
they made it very much about 9/11. It was about it was about Iraqi capacity to enrich uranium, and because they'd theoretically had some kind of contact with Al-Qaeda before, which turned out not really to be true. And they invented this whole justification. The real thing is that they had this belief that was totally insane, but they actually believed that if they went in there and set up a vibrant democracy in the middle of Iraq, that it would create be a game changer in terms of foreign policy, that they would have an ally forever in the region, that economically they would benefit. None of those things turned out to be true. They were completely off base. But to say that we weren't mercenary about it would be crazy. All right, so here's Trump. Here's Trump talking about the oil. This is interesting. Here's number 12.
As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a total bust for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and sold American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill. And the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, so we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it.
Okay.
Well, that was 1973. Chavez, nationalized the oil industry and expropriated those resources from their corporate owners.
Corporate owners. I mean, I would argue that
exactly. I mean, exactly. Anybody can argue that it was the right of him to redistribute the wealth that was going to the Yankee imperialist, but the truth of the matter is it did happen, and it's a little curious when I think back on it how uncontested it did go. I mean,
it wouldn't have gone uncontested.
I'm trying to think of the last time a country What's that?
it probably wouldn't have gone uncontested if we weren't neck deep in Vietnam at the time. You know,
Right. Right.
and look, we've been in lots of situations like this, you know, going back to Mossadegh and you know, Iran and the Shah, and you know, how many different battles have we had over this question of, which is, you know, fundamentally, it's hard to argue against the idea that a country owns its own resources, right? When it gets complicated is when the United States invests a lot in development, and then even if it's a bad deal, instead of renegotiating the deal, just take it. You know, I'm not in favor of just outright taking another country's resources.
Well, that was the most neocon thing Trump has said yet. What we just saw in under my definition of what neocon means. But let me sort of give you a couple stories. I knew one of the largest oil magnates in the world, a man who had served with George Bush Sr. on the aircraft carrier in World War II, and later came to control the Indonesian offshore oil business. Okay. He wanted a biography or a ghost written for him. And he took me aside in front of a big fire at a Colorado ski resort. And this was in about 2006. And I asked him, he was talking about his friends Dick Cheney and his friends George Sr. and his other, you know, oil poobahs. I said, tell me why we really went into Iraq. And he said, well, I was in the room. It was at the Houston, I forget, Oilman's Club or something like that, the title. And we were all sitting around when the decision was made. And I said, well, that's my worst nightmare. Tell me more. And he said, well, it didn't really have to do with Iraq in particular. It had to do with the region. We just had to get in there and kick some ass. And I said, what do you mean? He said, and this man was a racist, and in imitating him, I don't wish to, you know, affirm anything that he said. He said, those people there have the greatest resource on earth, the most valuable resource in the history of mankind. It's in some places 6 feet under the ground, and they couldn't get it out for the life of them. They couldn't get it up to the surface and across the desert to the port and onto the ship. We did all that. We did all that for decades. And now those little bleeps want to tell us that we're the great Satan and we're the this and the that, when we made them richer than anyone in history, those ungrateful bastards. So of course we went in there and kicked some ass. And that, if I were writing a novel about the affair, is the point of view, I would imagine, of the people at the top of Chevron and the people at the top of Exxon. And so
and it was also the view of Donald Rumsfeld, who you know, that was what that whole things related and not speech was about. It was, you know, we have to go in, make one big move, you know, sweep it all up, and they thought they were making a big grand gesture to kind of settle all family business, and instead they made the biggest mess of all time, which is one of the reasons that I tend to be against.
But the essence of their point, if they have one at all, and not saying that I agree with it, but I'm saying the one that they find so convincing internally, is that countries may own their own resources, and we share the profits from those resources. But if they can't unlock them technologically, if they can't unlock them politically, if they can't unlock them, you know, with their own manpower, know-how, and so on, do they not belong, at least in part, to those who can? That's their argument.
Yeah, no, I get the argument. I'm not there yet.
It's the devil. I mean, it's the devil. But you know, as persuasively as I can put it, I didn't write his biography, by the way.
Right.
I was like, Mark Twain said, you know, every rich man thinks he has a story when really it's just the story of the money itself.
That's probably a good point, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons. Was it Rockefeller who gave that he gave a really interesting speech not a speech. He wrote something about being quiet and why rich people are quiet generally. But all right. So look, all of this happened. We're still sorting out exactly why. There are, everybody's going to be flipping out mainly on, I think, on the legality question and on the congressional privilege question.
We had the exact same argument post bombing the Iranian nuclear facility.
Right.
And we also had the exact same spasms of, oh, we're going to war. Oh, the other shoe is going to drop now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We should show the Rubio tweet about Cuba if we could, just because it's a little bit significant if we can. Oh, does he talk about it? All right, let's hear it.
Is the Cuban government the Trump administration's next target, Mr. Secretary? Very quickly.
Well, the Cuban government is a huge problem. Yeah, the Cuban government is a huge problem. First of all,
So is that a yes?
Cuba, but I don't think people fully appreciate. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Yes, I'm not going to talk to you about what our future steps are going to be and our policies are going to be right now in this regard, but I don't think it's any mystery that we are not big fans of the Cuban regime, who, by the way, are the ones that were propping up Maduro. His entire internal security force, his internal security apparatus is entirely controlled by Cubans. One of the untold stories here is how, in essence, you talk about colonization, because I think you said Dulce Rodriguez mentioned that the ones who have sort of colonized, at least inside the regime, are Cubans. It was Cubans that guarded Maduro. He was not guarded by Venezuelan bodyguards. He had Cuban bodyguards. In terms of their internal intelligence, who spies on who inside to make sure there are no traitors, those are all Cubans. So
that's a very interesting answer. Yeah, I think they're in a lot of trouble after. And by the way, we're told Cuba itself, the government of Cuba, says that 32 Cubans died in this operation.
Well, that's what I said at the beginning of the broadcast, so I was right.
Yeah. So, and for him to answer in that way, I'm not going to talk about what our plans are, but I think they're in a lot of trouble. We have to remember that there's an awful lot of, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the reason we didn't more aggressively go into Cuba all those years ago when the revolution happened is because they were supported by, a very powerful adversary of ours. It was part of the Cold War chessboard that, and we didn't think that we could make a move like that. I mean, this has been documented a gazillion different ways, but it was obviously a very fraught situation. We nearly went to nuclear war just over the blockade to prevent more missiles from coming in. I mean, let alone actual regime change. But that adversary is no longer there, not ideologically anyway. And so this is a rethinking of, this whole idea of a Donroe doctrine. I'm not sure. I'll be honest. I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Well, I'm going to say the most controversial thing I think I can say on this program, which is this. I was raised to believe that overthrowing Cuba was almost impossible. I mean, almost impossible. We tried our best. And, I guess that traitor Kennedy didn't give air support to the Bay of Pigs. We used every nefarious CIA asset and assassination trick and poison and exploding cigar. We just couldn't do it. Well, I'm starting to wonder if Cuba's still there as a dictatorship because we just couldn't do it, or because we didn't do it. Because I don't see anything that they pulled off in Caracas that they can't pull off in Cuba.
No. And we obviously have a Cuban diaspora that very, very much wants us to go do something in Cuba.
Did Trump humiliate a whole multi-generational diplomatic lie that we are powerless over things that it turns out we're not? In other words, do we have uses? Have we had uses for Cuba in its communist form that we didn't admit to. I sound like a conspiracy theorist, and I am. But one of the great premises of the Cold War was somehow that we were doing our damnedest, but had to simply tolerate this, enemy base 90 miles from Florida. Maybe we didn't. Maybe that's what Trump is upsetting everybody by showing, which is that what was presented to us as a fait accompli was a choice.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that our sanctions regime against Cuba, especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I never felt good about that. But then I would meet people who were Cuban exiles who would be very heated if you even thought about expressing an opinion like that. Like,
do you remember how old you were when you first found out that we actually have a military base in Cuba?
Oh, yeah, right. Probably when I saw A Few Good Men, along with 50 million other people, right? Although I have the unusual experience of having been on a baseball team that was all Cuban in Uzbekistan in 1992. And this was sort of after communism had fallen everywhere else in the world except Cuba. And those guys weren't political at all. They were great kids. They taught, a lot of them were actually my first Russian teachers. They were and I never felt like there's been strong animosity between Cubans and Americans generally, but the two governments, it's a strange situation to have a government that with whom we get along so badly, so close to us.
In the history of American foreign policy, Matt, has it ever been true that we have supported ostensible enemies who we later have chosen to go to war with? Did we not support the Taliban and then go to war with them?
That's true.
Did we not support Saddam Hussein and then go to war with him? Did we not support elements like Saudi Arabians' industrialist family, the Bin Ladens, and then go to war with them? Have we not been playing the game of being enemies, friends, and then enemies again over and over and over? Is it at all possible that for some reason we tolerated a Cuban regime that they've decided not to tolerate anymore? I mean, or a Venezuelan regime even? Do we have uses for our enemies and our friends? And do we sometimes swap hats? Well, I don't see us doing much else in our history of relations with less powerful countries. And whether this is a chapter in that is my question for, history.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I have a feeling we're going to find out, because I have a feeling that this confrontation is going to happen. Maybe not right away, but I think fairly soon. If they're look, that's a significant quote from Rubio in response to that question.
Yes.
Especially given what just happened. I would think that, there's already the plans must already be fairly advanced for them to talk like that. By the way, for people who are asking the question, no, it wasn't a Cuban high school team that was actually in their mid-20s. These were what they call picarios. They were Cuban Spanish, the Cuban students in the Soviet Union who were subsidized, and they were kind of left there after the fall of the Soviet Union. So they weren't pretending to be any age, but what they were all in their mid-20s, and boy, could they play. In response to those questions, they were by far the best baseball team I was ever on. I could barely get on that team. I don't think I ever saw a ground ball actually get through the hole with those guys. But anyway, so okay, all that happened. This is going to be, there's going to be an incredible hue and cry over all this. We should spend a little bit of time on the other major episode of the day, which is Tim Walz stepping down.
Well, not stepping down.
Not. Let's
pulling
just-
pulling an LBJ and not running again.
Yeah, not running again. Let's listen to the 7th video clip. Satsum.
I was glad to turn the page on 2025. It was an extraordinarily difficult year for our state, and it ended on a particularly sour note. For the last several years, an organized group of criminals sought to take advantage of this state's generosity. And even as we make progress in the fight against the fraudsters, we now see an organized group of political actors seeking to take advantage of a crisis. I don't want to mince words here. Donald Trump and his allies in Washington and in St. Paul and online want to make our state a colder, meaner place. They want to poison our people against each other by attacking our neighbors. And ultimately, they want to take away much of what makes Minnesota the best place in the country to raise a family. They've already begun trying to withhold funds that were
And
meant
why
to
are
help
all my
families
friends
who are
moving,
childcare.
Tim?
And they have no intention of stopping there. My administration has been taking fast, decisive action to solve this crisis. We'll win the fight against the fraud. But
Okay.
the political gamesmanship we're seeing from Republicans is only making that fight harder. We've got Republicans here in the state legislature playing hide and seek with potential whistleblowers. We've got
Oh boy,
conspiracy theorist right-wing
because they're afraid they're gonna
breaking into
die.
our daycares, demanding access to our children. We've got the President of the United States demonizing our Somali neighbors and wrongfully confiscating funds that Minnesotans rely on. It's disgusting. and it's
Confiscating?
dangerous.
Confiscating.
Republicans are playing politics with the future of the state. It's shameful. These opportunists are willing to hurt our people to score cheap points. They
All right.
and their allies have no intention of helping us.
$9 billion isn't cheap points, baby. That's real money, as they say. Pretty soon.
Yeah,
we're talking real money.
pretty soon it'll add up to real money.
Is Tim Walz? Here's what is his message: that despite the fact that this is terrible and criminal fraud and so on, and despite the fact that it went on under my nose, at best, perhaps
And I didn't do a fucking thing until
and I
the
didn't do a
news
thing
broke.
about it. The unforgivable sin is to notice it, or the unforgivable sin is to, play politics with it in politics. What? Like, if you don't understand that this is bona fide political fodder, then you don't understand the business that you're in. I have never seen. See, I think it's the biggest story of the year, Matt. I really do. I think finally the biggest story of the year came about a month before the end of the year because it is affecting media. It's almost a devastating blow to legacy media. What, these YouTubers have done, for example. It is after the Doge thing, which was very controversial and gave people a sort of billionaire to hate. There's no billionaire to hate in this story. There's no Elon Musk with Doge slashing, budgets and laying people off in the middle of the DC winter. This is pure rage bait for anyone who works for a living and does it honestly. And I've never seen the spread of something. Nothing's completely organic anymore. Everything's boosted and pushed and so on. But I've never seen the spread of a story that was there for the taking for so long and has radicalized more people. I mean, over the holidays, not just me, but other people I know of a wide range of opinions, because in the Walter Kern arena, very few people think like Walter Kern, I'll tell you. I've never seen people so angry about a story, repeatedly angry. And now there's a Somalian fraud checker that you can plug in your town or state or your zip code and find out if suspected fraud is going on. And I had a guy from Idaho write me, and he'd plugged his town in over there in central Idaho, and he found out that the pizzeria was getting $4 million a year for some strange program.
Yeah, I mean,
this is beyond Doge. This, and as I say, I think it's only spreading, mounting in intensity, and it's got a kind of downstream effect on the media that I think is kind of final blow.
Well, as the story unfolds, because as we've discussed, the country is only just being introduced to the scale of what this is, and there are some other people, like Alex Berenson, for instance, is starting to look at similar narratives that don't necessarily involve Somalis, but do involve similar programs in bigger states like New York, and we're going to be dealing with even bigger sums, and the scale of the waste of all these accumulated programs, many of which came about as a result of COVID, the sort of massive influx of rescue cash that was approved in early 2020, along with a number of programs that, for a variety of reasons, didn't have a whole lot of oversight. Those programs are going, when people find out the extent of how much money has been lost,
but it hasn't been lost. That's the other problem.
Well, that's the thing. Yes, it has been diverted, and
that's the story. You're talking about finding out about the scale of the of the money involved, about the amounts. But the real story is going to be, where did it go?
Where did it go, and was it used for political purposes?
Yeah.
Right.
And I, Justice County Highway on November 12th, and I say this everywhere because I got a 2-year-old newspaper with a tiny staff doing its best to compete with the big boys. And as far as injecting this into the national consciousness, it's inarguable that after November 12th, when we ran our big story by Armin Rosen, which was discussing a panoply of frauds in Minnesota, not just the daycare, but the autism centers and the medical driving enterprises and so on, this whole thing went down. So first is first, even though there were many journalists over the years, and my hat is off to them in Minnesota, who were banging the drums.
But Walter, you're right though to take credit, because there was a big gap. Right. Like what happened was there was a story, there were indictments, and then basically every major mainstream news organization just backed off and didn't touch it. And it's going to be,
even when the governor, who presumably should have done something about it, was running for the second highest office in the country.
Yeah. I think this story either will be or should be fatal to a couple of big Minnesota newspapers. They won't. It won't happen, but the degree to which they didn't cover certain things is going to become a serious issue.
I'm a Minnesotan in voluntary exile. I did spend my entire youth there, all my education before college. But I will tell you that how this is viewed within Minnesota and how it's viewed outside of Minnesota are a little bit different. Minnesota did elect these people, in some cases over and over, with some sense that maybe things weren't all good. Minnesota is now in a kind of Monty Python-esque self-destruction loop, in which, as long as they can still feel good about themselves, they're willing to stand in the cold, naked, broke. It's sort of like the opposite of the soldier in the Monty Python movie has his arms cut off.
Right.
They're claiming,
come on, you pansy. Yeah, exactly.
They're claiming that they voluntarily are sacrificing all these limbs and all this money and all this, well-being in the name of something good, and they will do that down to their last toenail. Whereas from the outside, I think America is going like, why are you putting up with this? And Minnesotans have an answer, which is we're good people. And Tim Walz played to that instinct in that press conference. The important thing is not to be mean, okay? No matter
Right.
how much money, how many hours of labor, how many billions of dollars, and how many unserved, deserving kids and sufferers from autism you have to hurt. If you avoid meanness, the moral victory is yours.
I mean, I think Americans are about to find out just exactly how enormous the scale of waste and abuse is in this country. I mean, I think probably most people already know that it's really bad in the Pentagon. Like, there's a reason why you can't audit the Pentagon. There's a reason why almost every library in the country has radio ID on every book, but we don't have that on billion-dollar weapon systems in the Pentagon. We don't know where anything is. And so little tiny towns are managed better than the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, and gigantic programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and rescue programs like the ones that came about that were passed in the wake of COVID are managed even worse because they're not institutions. They're supposed to be these one-time appropriations, and so they didn't create ongoing standing oversight mechanisms. Not that we ever do that seriously anyway.
But they have oversight mechanisms over me. They know where my license plate shows up in a new town. During COVID, when I would drive over the border with Utah, my cell phone would automatically be pinged with a question relayed via satellite, no doubt, which is following my car, as to what I was doing in Utah, how long I plan to stay. The big story of this year, and I would even say of this era, few years, is this. How in a country that's on the border of artificial general intelligence, how in a country which has these military and technological capabilities almost unknown to the mind of man, almost unimagined and unimaginable to the average citizen, how is it that our government gets away with this stuff that it does? You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely.
There's a divergence between our apparent progress in knowing every word you speak and getting it down and filtering it and algorithmically boosting it, inspecting it, and so on. And the fact that you can defraud governments by millions of dollars in billions in almost an open fashion. And for those who care about this, how our elections can be only a matter of like 100 million votes that need counting. And yet, with these giant AIs and all of this, all of this prowess, we just can't keep track of them.
Yeah,
trucks show up with things, that change the results.
Yeah, and it takes us forever to count the votes when it didn't not that long ago.
Right.
How is it that only 15% of the congressional districts in this country are really competitive? There are a million questions. I think people. And this is the subtext to the the burgeoning populist movements on both sides, which is that the overwhelming scale of corruption and not even mismanagement, but just dismanagement, just like a refusal to do things correctly, or and the willingness to sort of openly lie to the public about things. This it's not a Somali program. This Feeding Our Future scandal is going to be representative, I think, of many other similar scandals of greater size even that are going to come out. I mean, the beginning of what happened with Doge when we started to look at USAID, which, by the way, you're right, was a really big story. It feels like a million years ago, but remember when people were finding out, oh my God, we spent $400 million on that, and all these incredibly stupid things that we just sort of casually throw money away on. These programs are going to, when all of this is tallied, it's going to look a lot worse. And I suspect it'll be worse in both Republican and Democratic states. But we'll see.
The paradox that can no longer be avoided is how have they advanced so far in the business of keeping you and me accountable and tracking our words, our opinions, our movements, our spending, etc., with the same technology that can't hold government accountable. And that is a proto-revolutionary question for America, because we're being asked to sacrifice more of our freedom because of surveillance and censorship and all these other technologies of control, which are reaching almost perfect levels of intrusiveness.
Yeah.
And yet we have no visibility in the other direction. That can't be sustained. That cannot be sustained. It's either going to be that they are held accountable who want to hold us accountable, or something will give.
Yeah. And I don't think it's any secret that that's been a subtext of this whole Trump era, that there's been an ongoing dispute between those who would sort of open the door and take a big whiff of what's going on inside the Augean stables, and those who would rather that all that be closed and remain as they, sort of inaccessible as it's been forever. But I think we're past the point where that's even possible. I think that was the idea behind the whole Martin Gurry thesis, the revolt of the public, which is that there's just too many ways to see now. And this feeding our future scandal, if I had to guess, it's just going to be the first of many. But this one is bad enough, and we're only just being introduced to it. So, and just quickly, I know we're over time wise, but to consider some of the other stories for this year, is that the biggest story of the year? That's an interesting question. I mean,
for me, it is that story is the accountability of our leadership and the ongoing question as to whether we can even expect accountability anymore. While they want to inspire us with these amazing technological breakthroughs, and yet tell us we can't figure out if kids are actually attending a daycare in a strip mall that looks like an adult store that was closed down, how
do we not have total visibility into all that stuff at once? Why is it still possible to fully redact freedom of information requests about where our money gets spent?
Right.
When the state has almost is able to do things like debank us for no reason at all, right?
Or figure out if a person with 100 followers is tweeting wrongthink.
Right, exactly. Among the other big candidates, Charlie Kirk's murder. I mean, it was a big story, and it was certainly a big story. I wouldn't say it's the biggest story of the year. USAID was a big story, but I think no, the Jimmy Kimmel Colbert things. I don't think the free speech controversies of this year really even reached the level of the ones that came up previously, except in the context of this larger schism between us and Europe.
And I would say the other story was, in some ways, the return of across the board hostility to Israel and Jews as a result, or at least in a way that was linked to the Gaza war.
Yeah, I mean, people will put this one of two ways. They'll either say that the Israel/Gaza is the biggest atrocity in the world, but
the war's over.
Yeah, right. And the this thing that's happening where all roads for some people, for a lot of people, lead back to Israel in this way that is, I think the way you put it is right. I think for a lot of people, this has become a time to verbalize and vocalize theories about
the grand conspiracy.
Yeah, the grand conspiracy that have been under the surface for a long time. Let's put it that way. I think that is a huge burgeoning story,
and that it has outlasted the end of the war.
It's outlasted the end of the war, and very similar to what happened in 2015 when we had populist movements on both the left and the right. This is also happening on both the left and the right, and so that I think that you're right to point that out. But yeah, I would say I would say this Minnesota thing and the associated corruption stories that are going to come out of it, it's going to turn out to be the biggest thing of the year. Luigi, unless there are more assassinations, there might be. But
well, remember,
you're right, that has my vote.
The Luigi trial under Mamdani is coming, quickly, and will be upon us presently, and that's another kind of story. In a usual year, the end of the Iranian nuclear program would be one of the big stories, if indeed it has ended. People who know a lot about building a bomb tell me it really would have to have ended. That even to give those laboratories a good shake makes them useless. Let alone pound them with bunker busters. But War and Peace was a big story, but the internal accountability of the U.S. government and the various sub-governments at state and local levels to the people of the United States, and their willingness to either put up with it or resist or protest it, is something that is, at least the fuse was lit last year. And with congressional and senatorial elections coming up in the United States, this will be the football. Yeah.
And both sides, by the way, are think that they're dealing with lawlessness and extra legal activity.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that's the biggest story. But we'll see. We're gonna have to choose a new book before next show. We'll do that. Maybe we'll even put a poll up. We'll see. But thanks everybody for listening in. Walter, any last thoughts, or should we wish people we have to wish everybody a happy new year. Happy New Year, everybody. Last year I didn't think it was a great year. I didn't love it, but I have high hopes for this one. So
Matt, last year, particularly December of last year, was the crappiest month I've spent personally in many years. Nowhere to go but up. We're going to have a lot to talk about. I think that we're going to see a second act for a lot of the things that Trump has promised, and a lot of the things that his supporters have been bugging him for not delivering on. It's going to be a year of arrests. It's going to be a year of exposure. It's going to be a year of, I think, MAGA maxing, because it's really the last year he has before the kind of formal lame duck and the next presidential election starts. So get ready for football.
Yeah, should be interesting. Yeah, no, I once had to spend a night in Bridgeport, Connecticut, in a bus station, and that's kind of what December of last year felt like. It was crappy in the same way. So it's not a high bar to jump over, but I think next year is going to be better. So happy New Year, everybody! Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you at the end of the week. And as we live in interesting times, we'll have a lot to talk about. Take care, everybody. See you then.